harassed, helpless, weak, powerless, confused, aimless, deceived, damaged, lonely, empty, longing, lacking, wanting, needing, living, dying. Too often we look at the surface and we judge. But Jesus looked into people's hearts and was moved. Rich or poor, sober or addicted, popular or alone, a life without Christ is a life that is empty. Whether someone is consumed by wealth, caught up in the culture, or crushed by poverty, the distractions of this world are all distractions from the same thing, the message of Jesus Christ. Whether people are starved morally, socially, or nutritionally, they're all starved spiritually. This universal poverty of spirit should move us from judgment to compassion, from observation to action. For just as Jesus called his disciples to feed the 5,000 with what little they had, he calls today's disciples to feed the world with what little we have. The miracle of Jesus is that he can take a little and make it a lot. Just as Jesus created leftovers from 5 loaves and 2 fish, what little you have through Christ can feed more people than you'll ever meet. The gift of salvation has filled our baskets to overflowing. We must now be like those disciples. We must go into the crowds and give the bread of life to every person we see. Don't let the surface distract you. Allow people's needs to move you, and obey as Christ compels you. You can't bring everyone you meet to Christ, but you can bring Christ to everyone you meet. Compassion is an action.
Compassion is an action, and that's where we base our message this afternoon, right? Compassion is the reason behind why we share Jesus to others. But whenever we talk about evangelism at church, I always have that reservations and hesitant that it's going to be like task focus. Whenever the pastor would preach about evangelism, share the gospel, etc., I feel like, there you go again. We will talk about Great Commission. We will talk about sharing the gospel, harvest, and all. And that's the reason why I have reservations. And I struggle with it. For some reasons, I struggle with fear. Because to share the gospel is really challenging. There's fear in me that I'll be ridiculed, I'll be disapproved by people and persecuted by the world. I'll not get the promotion I want. I'll lose the business that I'm trying to close, the transactions that I'm trying to close. People will laugh at me. People will mock me openly. I will not be invited to the parties and the Christmas party or the birthday parties. And what if my neighbors would be feeling awkward about me? I have 2 neighbors, and I was trying to reach out to them. And of course, we have the Reach Out Lives ministry here. We have the groceries, we have the items. So I gave them 1 box of pineapples, and then another strawberries, and they're so happy about it. And they, wow, why are you giving it to me? And I was hesitant to share. You know what? This is from church, but I tried it anyway. This is from church, and we just want to share the blessings that we receive. How can we help the church? How can we? Of course, you're welcome to go to the church. I tried to help them, tried to invite them, but we'll see one day. But at least I was able to connect. But before I engaged in that conversation, I felt like, there's a fear in me. I fear that they would reject me or accept me, or there would be awkwardness in our relationship. Fear is the biggest culprit that keeps most Christians from evangelizing and sharing Jesus. And another reason is ignorance. Many people, there's really the desire to share Jesus and to evangelize their friends and loved ones, but there's an ignorance. They don't know what to do. That's why I want to make an announcement that we will have a training on how to share the gospel, probably next year or the end of this year. We're just finishing the training that we have, the essentials, the fundamentals of faith. After we're done with that, there will be a set of trainings, 4 weeks only trainings, okay? To share the gospel, disciple people, helping, and all other trainings. And that will be for next year. And some of the reasons is arrogance. Some Christians today in the church, they would say, it's not for me. That's the reason why we pay the pastors. And I'm not paid here. But that's the mentality of many people. That's why we pay the missionaries. We send missionaries. We pay the pastors. We pay the leaders. We pay the youth pastor, the youth leaders, because that's their job to share the gospel. No, that's arrogance. It's not all about that. We are all called to preach the gospel. And then some of the reason is apathy. Some of us just don't care about the lost people. We're indifferent towards them. We have stopped praying for them. And it's when I was preparing this, it's a wake-up call for me, because when there's a question that comes to my mind: when was the last time that I invited someone at our home who are not Christian yet? It's like, oh, when was the last time? And that's something that steers my heart, and I want to do that again. I want to invite people to our house who doesn't have a relationship with God, and to engage them into a conversation about God. And then some reasons are lack of compassion. And we have all forgotten about how to live our lives without hope, right? You were once lost. We don't have hope. We are helpless. And then somebody shared the gospel to us and invited us to the church. We forgot that part already. And I think that's what we need to develop again. We rarely consider those who do not obey Christ, that they will suffer a punishment for eternal destruction. Can you think about that? We lack compassion to people. And these are the reasons that struggles whenever we talk about evangelism. People will just say, oh, it's another task. And these are our struggles about evangelism. And there are many reasons, and there are many ways and approaches to share the gospel. Approach differs on how effective it is. Some are door-to-door. People would give tracts from door to door. Remember that thing? I'm not sure if that's still effective today, but the other denomination or sect are still doing that. There's an open-air preaching, the big evangelistic events. That's a Billy Graham events, right? And some people find it street preaching or street sharing the gospel. I don't find that effective. But some people are still doing that. But up to them. Church Evangelistic Sunday with an altar call. We don't do that here. We've never done that here before. But that's a good thing to consider too. To invite people, if you want to commit yourself to Jesus, come, raise your hands, and then at the front. And then, last Sunday, I preached some in one church. Last Sunday morning, I preached at one church, and they called an altar call after I preached. And that was interesting. Many people came and prayed and cried and just accepted Jesus and recommitted their life to Jesus. Short-term mission trips. We go for mission trips abroad for a relief program, feeding program, right? And then some tele-evangelists through the television, radio evangelists through the television, radio station, internet evangelism. There are many now in the Reels, TikTok, right? And there's people are trying to share Jesus. And then there's also creative music, drama, chorale, film, and etc. And of course, there are personal, friendship, lifestyle, and there are more approaches that differ, depends on its effectiveness. Depends on the culture you are here. Some of these could be effective in the Philippines, in Asia, probably in Africa. But some of these are not effective also here in North America, right? And also depends on the church culture that you belong. But what is really the heart of evangelism? What is the main reason why we evangelize? What is the main reason why we share Jesus to our friends and to our loved ones? Why do we need to share Jesus? And that is our topic. I'll be speaking in the next 12 minutes about that thing called compassion. After Jesus shared his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. And then it followed by a fireworks of miracles, healings after healings after healings in chapters 8 and 9. He wrapped up with the 4 verses. And this is our main passage. Matthew 9, 35 to 38. Jesus went through all the towns and villages. This is a summary of what he did from chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Jesus was hopping from town to town, going to another synagogue. The first thing he did was teaching in their synagogue, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom. And this is the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus talked about the beatitude, how to be salt and light, and talk about anger. He talks about lust. He talks about divorce, loving your enemy, giving to the poor, prayer and fasting, how not to worry about, do not be anxious. And then he talks about the golden rule. So this is what Jesus mainly talking about, first chapters 5, 6, 7. And then he also talked about healing. Healing, it's an amazing fireworks display of miracles after miracles. He cleansed the leper. He cast out demons. He calmed the storm. He made the blind see, the lame walk, the mute talk, the dead live again. And it was amazing. And then Jesus wrapping it up in this chapter 9 of Matthew. And this is what happened. And then he said, when he saw the crowds, right, after he preached about the Sermon on the Mount, perform miracles one after another, after another. Jesus looked at the crowd and he said, after he saw the crowd, he was moved with compassion. He was like, oh, I shared, preach here, teach here and there, heal here and there. But the crowd, I feel compassion. Jesus is full of love to the crowd. And the Bible states that our God is actually a very compassionate God. There are many accounts in the Bible where you can see that Jesus really felt compassion. And then that urged him to do something. Then he healed their sick. And then Jesus was called to his disciples and said, I feel compassion for the people. And this was a time that he fed thousands of people because I don't want them to send them away hungry, for they might faint on their way. That concern, the deep concern of Jesus for people, whenever he sees the people, he's not looking at them as a piece of people. He's looking at them as people. He values them. He sees people as very important. He doesn't look at numbers. He doesn't look at crowd. He looks at them as very personal being, close to his heart. And he felt compassion. Another instant, he said that, move with compassion. Jesus touched their eyes, and immediately, these are the two blind men, immediately they regained their sight. And then they followed him, talking about his healing power. And another one in Mark is moved with compassion. Jesus reached out with his hand and touched him. This is the man that's a man with leprosy. That Jesus reached out and said to him, I am willing, be cleaned. He touched the man with leprosy. It's shame and so dirty to touch someone with leprosy. But Jesus moved with compassion. His eager love for this person, he reached out. He felt compassion. He's moved with compassion that urged him to do something about it. He was not looking at, kawawa naman. Oh, that feels so pity for him or her. And then move on. No, Jesus is not like that. When Jesus looked at someone, when Jesus felt something, compassion, and moved with compassion, he will do something about it. He will not move to the next. He will do something about it. And in this particular verse, he said, I pity for them because they were what? Dispirited and distressed, like sheep without a shepherd. While Jesus was looking at these people, after all the things that he did, he felt compassion because the people are lost, discouraged, dispirited. Some are depressed, and like sheep without a shepherd. A shepherd is someone that takes care of the sheep. A shepherd is someone that protects the sheep. A shepherd is someone that provides for the sheep. And this is what Jesus is looking, while he's looking at the people, he's like, they don't have a shepherd. No one's provided for them. No one is taking care of them. No one loves them. Our God was moved with compassion. They're lost. Our God is moved with compassion. Compassion is the reason Jesus came to this world. Compassion is the reason behind the ministry of Jesus. It's all about his love for people. And evangelism is all about that. And that is the culture that we want this church to live out. compassion for our families, compassion for our loved ones. When we see them living a challenging life, troubles here and there, problems here and there, and storms here and there, we feel compassion and we have to do something out of it. When we see newcomers in Canada, right? We just don't let him, okay, find your way to settle. No. We are moved in compassion. We want to help them. We want to help them settle. We want to do something, the best that we could. But what is compassion? Compassion is a sorrow for the suffering of others, accompanied by an urge. You can sleep until you help them. It's a deep sympathy and sadness for the troubles of others and a wish to help them. When you meet someone, when you listen to their stories, you see their needs, you see their struggles, their troubles. And deep inside you really want to help them. You can sleep at night, and while you're driving, you're still thinking about them. Who will take care of them? Who will guide them? Who will take care? Who will love them? Who will be there for them? Why show compassion to people? Why invite people to know Jesus? The truth is, every person is in the quest for happiness. Every person in this world wants to be happy. The sad reality is, many are sad and living a miserable life. The truth, Jesus is the only way to experience real happiness. I feel compassion for people. Because when you listen to them, they would say, you know what, we have this problem in the family, in my relationship, at work, my finances, my health. And then I feel compassion because, hey, Jesus is the way. Jesus is the answer. You just have to stop sinning. You just have to start reconciling. You just have to start taking the first move to initiate loving and expressing the love of Jesus. Jesus is the answer. I feel compassion for them because, come on, if you only knew what Jesus wants to do in your life, the first thing, the reason why we show compassion, because everyone is in quest for happiness. Everyone is also fighting their own battles. Everyone is in quest for happiness. Jesus is the only way to true happiness. Everyone is fighting their own battles in life. And Jesus is the only way to experience victory in life. I feel compassion for these people. Because if they only knew that Jesus is the way to true happiness and Jesus is the way to victory in life, they would embrace Him, live their lives and commit their lives for Him. That's the reason why I feel compassion. Because they are lost. They are like sheep without a shepherd. They are dispirited. They are discouraged. No one cares for them. No genuine people are taking care of them. And then after Jesus, look at the crowd. He felt compassion to the crowd. He went to His disciples. And He said, the harvest is plentiful. And that simply means, see these people? They need the Lord. The harvest is plentiful. It's not about objective harvest. It's about, convert him, convert her, convert. No. Jesus, the foundation of this statement of Jesus lies on His compassion. He looks at the crowd is lost because they're like sheep without a shepherd. And then He said, look at this. The harvest is plentiful. Look at this. They're lost. They need Jesus. They need support group. They need people who cares for them genuinely. They need people who loves them genuinely. And while He's talking to His disciples, He said, hey, listen to me. Peter, John, Thomas, come on, gather. And He said, hey, you know what? Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into His harvest. When Jesus talks about, hey, pray to God, pray to the Father, that's the first step of showing compassion. When you see someone, right? Someone sick, what are you going to do? You pray. When you see some homeless, what are you going to do? You pray. When you see someone struggling in life, what are you going to do first? You pray. But what's amazing, this is the last verse in chapter 9. In chapter 10, Jesus sent His disciples away. He was like, yes, you pray, but you have to do something. Yes, you pray, but you have to put it in action. That is compassion. Compassion is love in action. You should take action about what burdens you, what's breaking your heart. And just like Jesus was speaking to His disciples, Jesus is speaking to each of us this very moment. Think about that person that you want to know Jesus, because you know that they are living, or he or she is living, a miserable life today. Think about that person. Think about that husband who's living a miserable life today. Think about that wife. Think about your kids. Think about your relatives. Think about these people who are in quest for happiness. They need Jesus, the true way to true happiness. And Jesus is talking to you just like He was talking to His disciples. You pray, but you have to do something. You pray, but you have to put your compassion into action. I have 8 seconds for my 20 minutes. But let me just share this quickly. How to put our love into action. This is very quick. Listen actively. You listen to them. You will not know their whole story and their struggle if you will not take time to listen to them. You will not understand them until you spend time with them. Listening requires time. You spend time with your family. You spend time with your loved ones. You spend time over a cup of coffee. That's love in action. That is compassion. Compassion is not about only praying. Compassion is about taking action. And then you offer help and guidance. If you see the person that here living in sin, that's why they are continuing to live a miserable life, rebuke them with love. Offer help. How can I help you not to commit this sin again? Offer help. How can I help you live a holy and pleasing life to God? You provide moral support to them. You provide practical steps to them. And my wife was thinking, and I was thinking, how can we help these people? Should we be there 24/7 with them so that they could not, that's exaggeration, but how we wish we could be there to people so that we can guide them and then value the person. Whenever Jesus looked at the crowd, He always valued them. They are important. People are important to Jesus. He cares for them. You care for these people. You let them know you care. You verbalize it. You be vocal about it. And then you encourage them to know and follow Jesus. This is our mission. This is what we desire to do. When we have someone, you know that someone in your mind who's living in a miserable life, the best thing we can do is to pray for them. And then to let them know that Jesus loves them. To let them know that Jesus cares for them. To let them know that we are here to support them. This is how you can show compassion to others. This is how you can put compassion into action. Listen, the truth is, we are all called to preach the gospel. All. It is not the job of the pastor. It is not the job of any missionaries. It is not the job of any church leaders. It is the job of every Christian. It is the job of every Jesus followers. We are all called to preach the gospel, and we are all commissioned to make disciples. My role is to equip you My role is to give you instructions. My role is to inspire you and motivate you, to help you, to guide you, what's lacking. That's why we have over 25,000 resources at Right Now Media. Try to open that. Download that in your phone. It's like Netflix. Download that in your television. It's like Netflix. We paid for that because we want you to learn from there. We have the 4 Ps in our website. And we have trainings every Thursdays. And we will have more trainings every Thursdays next year to help you equip to share the gospel, to share the love of Jesus to people. We are all called, not my job, but your job. My job is to help you and equip you, to guide you. But we are all called to preach the gospel. We are all called to make disciples, and this is very important. The reason why we do that, not because of task. Whenever I listen or heard about messages about evangelism, I would always think, oh, it's a task, it's a task, it's a task. It's wrong. The reason we share Jesus, the reason we invite people, it's because we have compassion for them. Compassion must be the driving force of our calling. Compassion must be our motivation in sharing Jesus to others. Compassion is the heart of the Great Commission. Compassion is love in action. Is it clear? Now, I want you to go to your group. Okay? Are we communicating? Did you get my point? The whole point that I want you to do is you invite people, you share Jesus to people because of compassion, not because of task. It's because you care for them. You care for your brother. You care for your sister who are lost. Question number 1. Do you think we need to share Jesus with others? With your family and your friends? And why? Question number 2. Who are the people you feel compassion with? Why do you want to help them? Who are these people? You don't have to name names. You say, one of my family members, one of my classmates, one of my workmates, one of my gym mates. He's really sharing to me about his life, and I feel compassion, and then there's an urge within me to help them. And then prayer is the first step. The last verse of chapter 9. Pray to the Lord to send workers. But while Jesus was talking to his disciples, he said, hey, you disciples, you go. In chapter 10. Right? You pray for the Lord to raise workers, but you go. In chapter 10, he dispersed them. Prayer is the first step in showing compassion to others. What do you think is the next step to show compassion to others?